took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, but you never renounced that oath. The veteran is probably the most influential civilian over our state legislators. As a Veterans Coalition's director, you will help recruit, welcome, and educate other U.S. military veterans in your state about the only constitutional solution that's as big as the problem. You will be proactive in raising grassroots support with veterans groups in your community. We invite you to continue your service to our great nation. Your country still needs you.
Get an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And what that meant was I was willing to give my life for my country, for the country, for the Constitution, and for the American people.
I haven't lost that.
Once that's in your blood, you realize that there are things more important than me.
And I'm going to continue to fight for my Constitution and every bit of the Constitution, including Article 5.
When I took the oath for the Air Force to defend the country and the Constitution, I took that as a lifetime oath. I'm serving as a civilian today to save the Constitution and the United States.
That time in service meant a lot to me. Just realized that this constitutional solution was most likely the only answer that's left.
I think this is the most important thing I've ever done in my life.
That this is the lawful, peaceful, constitutional recourse to what they're upset about with our federal government.
I strongly believe that our only way out of the situation we have right now is to give the power back to the people and back to the states.
I got friends buried in Arlington and a lot of other places around this country. And what they died for wasn't just simply the foundation of the nation, but the preservation and maintenance of those freedoms. The only way we're going to save this republic, I believe, is to get about the process of the states regaining and recontrolling the federal government, because it is the states that created the federal government. It is the states that must control it.
Ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
To do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom.
Liberty and self-determination is in the hearts and the DNA of our people.
Every place I go, I meet great patriots who are doing great things for this country.
Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look.
Born in Maryland, a little town named Cumberland, but I grew up in Pennsylvania, so my formative years, if you will, were all spent at Erie, Pennsylvania. Well, I met my wife at pilot training in Texas. We've been married 45 years. I flew a total of 70 missions over North Vietnam and another 37 over South Vietnam. Survived to come home to my wife and daughter, and later on we added a son to the family. The 2008 election convinced me that I really needed to understand my Constitution better, and I started by taking some courses on the Constitution. I said, there's some things I would emphasize differently if I was designing this course. Put all of my energies then into building up the Constitution Leadership Initiative, the organization I founded. That's what I've been doing since 2012, is teaching the Constitution and teaching the principles that are found in it.
We can see where $18 trillion worth of debt is going to go. It's going to go to 19 trillion and 20 trillion, and there is absolutely...
I kind of fell into the Convention of the States project through happenstance, or providence, if you will. In 2014, I was invited by my friends to go to Richmond, Virginia, and lobby against some bills that would have had Virginia apply for a convention. So as we were leaving that day, I noticed a pamphlet that advertised a presentation by Michael Ferris to explain the Convention of the States project. He put forward some arguments that I had never encountered before.
People like us, people that are frustrated with Washington, D.C., often say, well, they don't follow the Constitution anyway. Not true. They follow the wrong one. They're following the Constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court, rather than the Constitution as written.
This, taking out of my pocket, is a pocket Constitution. 4,000 words in the original document, 4,400 words, but here is the Constitution in force today. This is 3,000 pages of Supreme Court rulings showing what every ruling has done to the original words. Every page in this document means a grant of power to the federal government. This is the Constitution in operation today. Unless we make its wording crystal clear, we're going to continue to operate under this document forever and ever until the whole house of cards comes falling down. On the 15th of September, 2 days before they signed the document, the end of 4 long, hot months in Philadelphia, they were ready to go home. But George Mason noticed that Article 5 only had a single method for amending the Constitution. He said, wait a minute, what if Congress becomes an obstacle and refuses to put forward to the states needed amendments? He insisted, and it passed unanimously, that there be this second method of amending the Constitution. We want there to be a controlled convention, and that's where the specific instructions espoused by the Convention of States project come in.
If you want term limits on Congress, if you want term limits on Supreme Court, only Convention of States give you that. If you want fiscal restraints on the federal government that go way beyond a balanced budget amendment, you get that in Convention of States. You have the right and the obligation to have that discussion for the American people. Are you guys with me?
As we approach an Article 5 convention, we will have discussions about the Constitution in every location. Bedrooms and living rooms and bars and offices, taxi cabs, public parks. People will start asking the right kinds of questions of candidates. What is the original design of government? And if it's different today, how do we change back to that original design of government? This constitutional republic is in great jeopardy. Franklin said they were giving us a republic if we could keep it. We have not done a very good job of keeping that republic, and we're about to lose it if we don't take some drastic steps.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm a little confused. We have people praising the Founding Fathers in the document that they've written, yet they're telling us not to use a portion of the document that they've written. Over the last 20 years, our national debt has doubled twice. Twice! Under administrations of both parties. So what is the hope that they're going to rein that spending in? The gentleman from Greenbrier mentions 54% wanting to go socialist. Well, the document says 75% have to ratify it. I'm not worried about that 54%. The senator from Greenbrier stood up and said it's an insult to those that have fought wars. Sir, I've fought wars. I'm not offended by this resolution, and I'm not offended by this document. Mr. President, I urge adoption of this resolution.
Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Clifford Sisko, S-I-S-K-O. I'm from Miles City, Montana. I come here today in support of Convention of States Resolution SJ2 being presented here today. As a veteran, I believe as strongly now in the ideals set forth in our founding documents as I did when I joined the Navy. As a young man, all of 17 years of age, I stood alongside a number of other young men and women who swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I have not been released from that oath. Like so many others who came before us, we did what that oath required of us. Every day we put on that uniform. And every time we went into battle, we upheld that oath. The words honor, commitment, and courage. Those words have meaning and substance. They aren't just words thrown out like so much verbal gibberish. We acknowledge and live by those words. Every person who puts on and proudly wears the uniform of this great country does their level best to comply or exemplify those words at all times. I feel I can't emphasize strongly enough those words, honor, courage, and commitment, should mean as much and have the same impact on our elected officials, both state and federal, in upholding the oath they have taken, as it did to all who have worn the uniform of this country. I took another similar oath when I became a life member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States. You will notice both of those oaths say, support the Constitution, not the government. Right now, I feel a domestic threat we face in this country is our federal government. And the only way to overcome that is to give the power back to the states through implementation of Article 5 Convention of States. The framers gave us a remedy. If that administration or the Congress should abuse its power, that remedy is the second option of Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States. I believe we are beset by a federal legislature who has all but abdicated its power to the executive. This is easily seen in our bloated bureaucracies and expansive federal departments, whose tentacles encroach on nearly every aspect of our lives. We are beset by its power through a federal executive who has all but abdicated its power to the judiciary, where policies known to be unconstitutional are put into motion in violation of the very oaths they swore to uphold, all with an eye to the judiciary for final determination. We are besieged, excuse me, by a judiciary that consists of unelected and unaccountable judges who all too often exceed the authority given them under Article 3, with the power to rewrite law or executive policy with a simple decision rooted less in constitutional principles and more in personal preferences, which effectively create an oligarchy. James Madison wrote in Federalist 47 that the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether the one, the few, or the many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced, is the very definition of tyranny. I didn't serve our country to live under that yoke. Governments are instituted amongst men for the sole purpose of preserving the liberties of the governed. If Congress becomes a problem, who are we going to be able to go to for redress of grievances? The five framers gave us this tool to use to maintain the precepts and rules enshrined in that beautiful document. If you believe in the Constitution, you must believe in all of it. It is for this reason that I am willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with all of you as you fight to use the Constitution, to save the Constitution, to bring the federal Leviathan to heal and to return the power back to the states and to we the people. This ship we all call the United States is listing at 45 degrees. And any further, she founders. Let's do what we need to do to right this ship before we sink. One of the issues commonly used is the fear factor of having an Article 5 convention. If you have ever been in combat, you're very familiar with the fear factor, but you're also very familiar with the fierce pride and sense of honor you've left all standing together with your fellow members during a firefight. We must never let fear prevent us from doing what is right or needed. I don't want to even imagine where we would be today if our men and women in uniform would have given up during World War I, World War II, Korea, or Iraq. If those who gave the full measure of service to country could give voice today, they would ask, is our sacrifice all for nothing? Thank you.
Have never really been involved in politics before, but it's my voice counts. I mean, I did serve my country proudly, and it's time to serve it again. That oath is for life, and the thing that I really want to see in politics is our veterans being recognized again and taken care of, because what is going on in our country, especially with our veterans, it's
not right.
It's sad.
Yeah.
They were willing to give their lives, their bodies, their families. They sacrificed it all, and our country owes them.
Name is Dave Lockman, 73 years old, and a 50-year resident of the state of Wyoming. So I'm no youngster for Wyoming. Anyway, I come here with 5 friends today that represent, interestingly, going clear back to the time of George Washington at Valley Forge. Ron's grandfather, 11 generations ago, served right under General Washington at Valley Forge. And that Declaration of Independence became the forerunner of what became the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution and Bill of Rights of the United States of America. My father served in World War II in all 13 theaters of the South Pacific. He taught flag etiquette all through his life to schools and so on. He started a war memorial in Brighton, Colorado. Ron's dad landed on Normandy Beach, so went through a lot of heck when he was there. My brother, Ron, served in Vietnam, and we're concerned about, our families spent a lot of their lives and families defending our Constitution. And we're very concerned, all of us, about the future of our Constitution based on what's happening today in Washington, D.C. We have a lot of coffee time together. I and my friends talking about this in the mornings, the ones that are retired anyway. I just retired a couple of years ago. And that's why we're here today. It's been befuddling to me after getting more involved with the good people that are concerned about this Convention of States, that Wyoming hasn't got right in the forefront of it. We don't have many tools left, the way we look at it, to preserve our republic and the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And so we'd appreciate anything you could do to help us along them lines, so that our kids and grandkids can have a future in this great country. And we don't have a lot of options left. We look at it, and this is something the states can do. That in the ballot box, if hopefully we can keep it from changing the rules there. But anyway, well, thank you for letting us speak, and we'd appreciate your yes vote. And for you to get out behind with your colleagues in the Senate and House and really get this thing going.
Someone came up to me earlier and said, "Are you here to fire us up?" And the reality is, no. Looking out at that crowd fires me up. I mean, listen, I look at where our country is and where it's going, and I wonder what we can do about it. And to me, Convention of States is the second American Revolution, without the bullets this time. It's the opportunity for the people to actually stand up and do something big enough and worthy of our founding promise. And I don't have to explain the problem to people in this room. We understand what it is, and we know that neither political party is going to get it done. That's a room full of patriots, and it's going to be that 1%, 2%, 3% of patriots that are willing to cut through the resistance and say, now is the time. And this is the place. So I am honored to be a part of it and just to sit in front of so many great patriots. Well, it's an extension of service, A, and B, to the country and to the Constitution, to the oath that they made. You come back and it's hard to find a place of the same size and scope where you feel like you can have an impact for your country and for the Constitution specifically. It also is one of the things vets miss the most when they take off the uniform is the sense of purpose that you have. There's a meaningfulness to serving something greater than yourself, God and country. And so when you can come back and find something like this that's so well run, the mission is so clear, there's a grassroots imperative in every state. It's not like you just have to go to Washington, D.C. You can connect right where you're at. You add all that up, and it's like, well, this is the red, white, and blue uniform I can put on right now. And the training that I've been given, show up on time, work hard, have integrity, commit to a team, but also know how to lead. Those are all attributes that I know Convention of States loves to have in people involved too, so it works both ways. Great question. First of all, remember the media is not the real world. Most people in media have no connection to or even understanding of Middle America or the folks in this room, hardworking folks who work every day, commit to their families, and then believe in this country unapologetically. They just don't get it, right? They went to the elite schools and have all the elite clubs, and they talk to each other, and they're baptized in the wokeness of their leftism. It just is who they are. Journalism schools produce leftists, and then they go out and produce news. And fake news is not just what they tell you; it's also what they don't tell you. So they don't tell you about Convention of States until they see it as a big enough threat, and then they tell you what an evil thing it is. So your job is to build the relationships with the legislators who you can have honest conversations with, who went into office for the right reasons, but sometimes don't have the courage to actually just do what they were sent there to do, which is ultimately serve their community, but also they did it because they love the country as well. So the media is going to do what it wants to do, and it's going to yell and scream about certain things. But I do think there are local reporters in local places who are still honest journalists and committed to the craft of the media. And you can approach them and build a relationship with them and see if they're willing to write something honestly. Otherwise, if you come to New York City, which is the hub of media, there's only one square block of sanity, and it's the Fox News Channel. So you can come visit us and see the one spot where this might even, a guy like Mark Levin, there's nobody better on this topic. And talk to Judge Andrew Napolitano, who's a friend of mine. He's been an endorser of Convention of States. People who look at the Constitution seriously, who take that oath, and there's a lot of them at Fox, but there's a lot of things to cover too. So getting people focused on the issue can be a challenge. But when people vector in and look at Convention of States and then understand it, it's hard for them not to support it. And that's part of what my job is too. I would say, what are you waiting for, and what evidence do you have that the things that we've been doing or the things you've tried to do have thus far worked to stem the problems of the overreach and growth and complete irresponsibility and recklessness of the federal government? Like, what has worked? Has it been electing Republicans? Has it been Republican legislatures? Has it been Democrats and Democrat legislatures? None of those things have limited the size and scope of government, have put our inserted any amount of fiscal responsibility, and the so-called swamp is never going to fix itself or reform itself. So if you want the power to actually roll back the leftist takeover of our government, nothing you're trying is working. And don't fall for the small petty arguments of, well, it's going to be a runaway convention, or it's going to be this, or it's going to be that. There are so many checks once you understand this into what they're sent there to do, what they can do there once they get there, what happens if something goes awry, and then the states have a check once again, that it is the opposite of reckless. It's in fact an imperative for patriots to say, I will. It's not even a roll of the dice. It's a duty to and this is where I think you have to rewind and put yourself in the shoes of the men and women in the 1775 and 76 and that era. They had no sense that what they were embarking on would be successful. They had faith in God, and they had faith in rights that He endowed on them, and that was something righteous and worthy of fighting for. But taking on the most powerful empire in the world was like the worst idea ever, except they knew that their cause was right. And ultimately, through that righteousness, they were given an opportunity to succeed. And I think in this case, I don't know what the world's going to look like in 2025, but I sure as heck ain't going to wake up saying, well, I'm still working just on the 3% cut on it's like that. That's not going to get it done, folks. So if you're willing to be a bold person of the moment, this is where you're going to be.
Because I'm a veteran and I'm a disabled veteran, I believe that we are supposed to support America and we're supposed to take care of this country. And that's, to me, that's what the Convention of States is all about, is trying to defend our country against the various things that are going on in Washington today. I got involved with Convention of States actually by accident. I was surfing the internet and kind of reading comments from various folks about various things going on with COVID and all the situation that's going on right now. And somebody had mentioned Convention of States, which I had never really heard of. And they encouraged me to go read it and had put out the actual link to it. So I went on the web and read all about the Convention of States, got very interested, signed a petition before I actually talked to anybody. And then after I signed a petition, I was contacted. And I came back and said, you know, this is a pretty interesting situation. When I was contacted, they asked me if I would be willing to assist, and I absolutely stepped up right away. As a service-disabled veteran, I feel that I'm still trying to protect my country, and I really think it needs it right now. My biggest frustration with Washington, D.C. is just all of this fighting, infighting, constantly fighting. Like, nobody wants to sit down and negotiate and figure things out. And every time they pass a bill, it might be a bill for something minor, $500,000 thing, which of course to some people doesn't sound minor, but to Washington that is. But by the time that bill goes through, it comes out at $2 million. And it's got all of this pork added on, etc., which I think is not necessary. I think what we need to do is we really need to look at things. We need to live within a budget. We need to have term limits so that people won't be there forever. We need new ideas. We need to make our country better, always better. I understand there's 15 states already that are ratified. Michigan would be the 16th state. I'd love to see that happen. I really want to support my grandchildren and make sure that they're taken care of in the future. And I feel that the way things are going right now, with the money being spent and basically like water, it's just flowing and flowing. My grandchildren are going to be paying, my great-grandchildren will pay, and etc. And I don't want that. I really want to get control of America, start paying off our debts instead of incurring more costs constantly, and control our budget and make sure that we live within that budget. First, of course, they should sign a petition, hopefully make a small donation to help us out, because we do need a lot of materials to help pay for it, etc. But then, beyond that, talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors. Promote this activity. Get people to understand what it's all about and realize that they can fix Washington. I think a lot of people are so frustrated they feel that it'll never get fixed. But it's up to us. It's up to us as Americans to do that.
My name is James Burrow. I have been many things to many people in my lifetime. I'm a steam fitter and a proud union tradesman. I am an alumnus of both a four-year college and the Wisconsin Technical School system. I am a husband, a father, a son, a brother, a student, and a teacher. One of the things I am most proud of, though, is my time as a soldier. For nearly 22 years, I have served our nation on active duty, as well as in the Wisconsin National Guard and Army Reserve, with the last 12 years of my service as a drill sergeant. I have trained hundreds, if not thousands, of young men and women. They look to my peers and I to teach, coach, and mentor them to be tomorrow's warriors and leaders. They know us by our iconic hats and our badge with the words, "This will defend." When they enlist, they swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that we will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. I have always implored my soldiers to read and understand the Constitution. After all, they have sworn to uphold it. When soldiers retire, are discharged, or otherwise complete their service, they are never absolved of this oath. I am here today to uphold that oath. to uphold the Constitution by insisting that Wisconsin proclaim that the abuses perpetrated by our federal government will no longer be tolerated, to join with the 15 other states in calling for a convention of states, to remind the federal government that it is we the people from which their powers are granted, not vice versa. When our founders wrote the Constitution, they came together as statesmen, leaving behind their farms, their businesses, their trades. They could scarce imagine that anyone would be able to, let alone want to, make a career out of politics. We now have politicians that have decades in office, far removed from their constituencies. They appear less concerned with representing and more concerned with politicking, using their positions for personal gain and profit by peddling influence without recourse, by doling out mega-sized omnibus and relief bills that are literally giving away the wealth of our nation without coming close to balancing the federal budget. Of course, it is not all of them, but it is enough of them. And it is time for them to make way for those that would better represent their people's interests. The opening statement of the U.S. Constitution states, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." Our founding fathers were not so vain as to think that they had perfected government. They left us room to refine and to continually strive towards excellence. They recognized that they were all fallible, but from the laborious task of arguing merits and faults, produced a document unlike anything the world had ever seen. It is up to us to safeguard it. It is up to us to say, our Constitution will defend it. Our nation will defend. Our people will defend. This is our line in the sand, and this we will defend. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and distinguished members of this committee. My name is Doug Dorn, and I live in Brookfield, Wisconsin. I'm here to speak in favor of SJR 8, and I am representing myself here today as a concerned husband, father, United States citizen, Army veteran, son of a veteran, and a taxpayer. A portion of the money I earn every day enables my local, state, and federal government to function. Millions like me fund the greatest nation this world has ever seen. After years of watching people speak boldly on the campaign trail and act weakly once they take office, I search for a way to truly affect the positive change I believe our nation needs. I stumbled across an organization called Convention of States. Through them, I learned about the power of Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. Article 5 gives American citizens the power to directly influence the future of our great nation. Of the people, by the people, for the people. Article 5 is what our nation needs now. Our federal government is out of control in many ways and so overgrown, I'm not sure our founders would recognize it. One of the topics of the Convention of States is to address is the overreach of the federal government. And here are two of the most egregious examples, in my opinion. The health care known as Obamacare, Common Core. Obamacare, our monthly health care plan, my family, the premiums have increased from around $20 per paycheck to $225 per paycheck. Our annual deductibles have increased from around $200 per year to $6,000 per person and $13,000 per family. While the prices go up, the quality of service has gone down and we are waiting longer for appointments. This government overreach is little more than redistribution of wealth. In terms of Common Core has removed classic literature from classrooms and replaced it with diversity, equity, and inclusion dogma. Sophisticated writing by world-class authors and elevated, interesting vocabulary disappeared, replaced by colloquial, dumbed-down language that elevates no one's thinking and repeats the same tired, politically correct dogma in book after book. Common Core also dumbed down math while making it less fun to learn or teach. Math facts are now not as important as flexible thinking. Diverse math strategies become the focus, such as 5 different ways to do multiplication and long division. This complicates problem solving and confuses kids by focusing on choosing the strategy that is right for you, rather than solving problems simply, accurately, and consistently. The right answer is not as important as having choices in how to arrive at an answer. The Chinese, Japanese, South Koreans, and other nations are leaps and bounds ahead of us in math excellence, both in teaching strategy and in sophisticated student outcomes. A convention of states is a convention. It's a meeting. It is not a constitutional convention. It is simply a convention or a meeting of the state representatives. Earlier, you heard from a member from the John Birch Society, and he used the terminology constitutional convention. That's not what a convention of states is. It's just a meeting of state representatives. And the people that oppose convention of states like to use this constitutional convention language to muddy the waters and stoke fear. So I urge you to vote yes for SJR 8. Please, this really is the only viable solution. Just watching people go to Washington, D.C. and nothing changes. The Article 5 in the U.S. Constitution was put in it for a specific reason. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for considering this.
Thank you very much. Senator Baldarchi, Representative Matlack, and the members of the State and Local Government Committee. Good morning, or excuse me, good afternoon now. Been a long morning. My name is David Simmons. I'm a resident of Bangor, and I'm here in strong support of HB 467, and I thank you for that opportunity. Why am I so passionate about the Constitution? In February of 1975, as a high school senior, I raised my right hand and enlisted in the United States Army. I swore an oath to my God and before my peers that I would support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I wasn't asked to defend its borders. That was understood. I wasn't asked to defend a particular ethnicity, though all would be shielded. I was asked to defend an idea, a concept. That idea, unlike other nations, is passed down from generation to generation. We teach it to our children. We try to impress upon them the gift that we have. This idea, this gift, this blessing is liberty through self-governance. When I swore that oath, it was a covenant oath, which one gives his entire being into a family bond tighter than any contract. I served in the United States Army for 42 years. Today, 4 years since my retirement, that oath is still in effect, still just as strong, and still in my blood. I take this very seriously. Today, our federal government is out of control. It has become an enormous bureaucracy. It spends way too much and is intent on encroaching into our day-to-day lives through regulation and other controls. Thomas Jefferson once said, as government grows, liberty decreases. There is no indication that Washington wants to or is capable of repairing these problems. But I don't believe that this is a people problem in Washington. I don't agree with the majority of politicians or bureaucrats in Washington, but I want to believe that they are doing their best. I see it as a structural problem within the government. The founders knew man's nature, his and her ambition. They knew the dangers of majority faction. They structured our Constitution to limit the effects of these failings. They gave us the separation of powers, legislative balances and checks, an independent judiciary, and representative legislatures. In recent years, these structures have been ignored, bent, broken, and only observed when they're working when it was to their benefit. The different branches of government are provided various powers through the consent of the governed. A government protects the life and property of its citizens. It must control the passions of its citizens and also must control its own passions. The way this is done is through legislation by reason and deliberation, providing a filter for the passions of our nation. The founders knew that there would be a need to adjust various parts of the Constitution in the future due to the discoveries of inefficiencies in its working. But a constitution by its very nature is supposed to be solid, concrete, to stand the test of time. So they understood that there would have to be a way of adjustments. So the US Constitution's Article 5 gives we the people the charge to apply through state legislatures for the establishment of a convention of states for the purpose of proposing amendments. The founders, in their joint wisdom, wanted the amendment process to be difficult, but not impossible. Notice also that there's no test given for this. You don't have to come up with specifics why you want to have a constitution convention of states. When the convention of states is convened and the various committees deliver through deliberation proposed amendments centered on the three areas of our resolution: limiting the federal government, fiscal restraints, Maine has a balanced budget, its power and jurisdiction. I'm sure that some of you must have had some people come up to you from time to time and talk about their problem with regulatory controls, too many regulations. And 3, term limits for officials and members of Congress, and has already been mentioned. We have those term limits. After the proposed amendments are debated, changed if need be, and then voted on and accepted, our representative democracy will not have changed. The Bill of Rights will still be there. The making of legislation and adjudicating laws or execution of them will remain unchanged. All that will have changed is that those that consent to be governed will have strengthened the existing structure of the US Constitution of our government by minimizing individual and group ambition. This will return much needed power to the states, where most of the domestic power should be exercised, and give the states its proper place in our federal form of government, exerting some balance to Washington. We must make the United States of America plural again. Senator Baldarci, Representative Matlick, and members of the state and local government, I thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak. I ask that you consider the problems in Washington, the necessity of HB 467, and give it your support by voting on it to pass. Thank you.
I'm just looking forward to networking with all the like-minded people, patriots that are doing really God's work to try to save our country. You know, I spent 26 years in the military. I understand what it means to be supportive and defend the Constitution, and you know, I don't want our country to turn into a socialist country. So probably like most people, as Mark Beckler always says, I first heard about it through Mark Levin and knowing that he was coming out with his book. And then it was like 2014, 2015, I started looking for COS online, see what was going on, and found it, and got in touch with the state director, Mark White, who, you know, we were the first two on board for Convention of States in Hawaii, and, you know, it's been a slog ever since. I remember Mark Levin at the 2019 one, always a powerful speaker. I really follow him a lot, and I like Steve Deace. Him coming out in support of Convention of States now. I've listened to him for quite a while, and I like his message and understanding of what we need to do. But all the speakers are going to be great. You know, they're speaking our language. If you need to get involved, if you want to make sure our country is safe for your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and that they don't end up in a state or a country that's socialist, government-run, statist, whatever the terminology, you need to get involved. Because as Mark Levin once said, you know, our generation is going to leave the next generation less off than we were left from our parents and grandparents. So it's very important to get back to our roots of the country and make sure that we continue to be that shining light on the hill for other people to come in.
It's in the United States Marine Corps from 65 to 69, in Vietnam 66 and 67. During our working careers, my wife and I bought and paid off a dairy farm in Schellsburg. In retirement, rental from that farm was to help supplement our income. Then County Road W needed to be replaced. The state needed federal money. To comply with the strings attached to that federal money, I had to surrender several acres to the state. Of course, I was paid the current price for those acres, but not the 20 or 30 years of rent. The strings were written by a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. The state hired road engineer, the county highway department, my state senator, and representative all agreed that taking my land was not necessary to ensure the quality and safety of the road. However, none had the authority to do anything about it. The authority to accept or modify the strings attached to federal money belongs here with the people familiar with everything Wisconsin, not in Washington, D.C. I'm a combat veteran. I've been in firefights. I know fear. Please do not let fear of doing something in this political climate paralyze you to do nothing. You have the power of the Constitution, the power of your constituents, and the power of history to stand up and reestablish the sovereignty of this great state against an overbearing federal government. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated, unless you're too excited to be seated. Wow, what a turnout. This is fantastic. Where's that busload from Alexandria? Wow. Okay. Fantastic. My name is Steve Davidson, and I'm a volunteer for the Convention of States. And I'm here because, as a Vietnam veteran, I swore an oath, like many of you have, to protect and defend this Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that oath does not expire until I do. I'm here because I want to fight for my kids and grandkids, and for your kids and grandkids. I fear the life they will have when that $20 trillion plus immoral federal debt comes crashing in on their lives. I fear for the life that our kids and grandkids will have when that $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities from the federal government that comes crashing down on their heads. I fear the life they will have with regulations after regulations created by unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats enter every nook and cranny of their life and destroy their liberty. And I fear for the life our kids and grandkids will have if they are governed by a ruling elite in Washington, D.C., who believes that sovereignty lies within their own political power and money from special interests. It is time, ladies and gentlemen. This is the moment when we, the people, need to stand up and use this fantastic tool. How do we actually do this? Well, the Founding Fathers. How do we re-educate these people in Washington, D.C. and let them know that it's we, the people, that the Constitution says has sovereignty in America? They need a lesson. And the question is, what actions do we take? How do we actually accomplish that? We talk about this all the time in coffee shops and every gathering around. But what can we actually do to make it happen? Well, the good news is that the Founding Fathers, in their God-given brilliance, recognized that America would someday be in this situation. And they provided us with a tool, a weapon, the authority, a gift to use exactly for a time like this. And it's found in Article 5 of the United States Constitution. It gives we the people, working through our state legislators, the opportunity to propose amendments to the U.S. Constitution. And with properly written and clarifying amendments to that Constitution, we can once again be a country that is governed with the consent of the governed, and once again be a country with a government of, by, and for the people.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mark, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all in the Mississippi State Capitol with these incredible state representatives and state senators that have come together to talk about something that's so important for the future and the legacy of this constitutional republic. You know, it's sad that we don't teach civics too well in our schools today, and most people don't understand what it means to live in a republic. And Mark talked about something, and I just want to show you, Mark, there's my pocket constitution. And the thing, when you look at this little pocket constitution, it's falling apart. If you want to come up and check it out, it's underlined, it's highlighted. That's why it has the paper clip on it. Because there was something that happened through 4 generations in my family. Words that we all spoke. And those words were that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And that I take this oath with no purpose of evasion, so help me God. My father said those words as he went off to fight in World War II. My older brother said those words as he went off as a Marine infantryman to fight in Vietnam. On 31 July 1982, I had the privilege and the honor to say those words. And my nephew, who is currently serving in the United States Army as a major, as a paratrooper, as an artillery officer like his dumb old uncle, he said those words as well. And so that's why I'm here in Mississippi. Because what we're talking about is just doing that which we say we take an oath to each and every day. What we're talking about is the thing that binds us together, our rule of law, our Constitution. And when you think about the incredible intellect and prescience of the founding fathers, as they wrote Article 1, 2, and 3, and 4, to think about, as Mark said, how do we keep this thing called the federal government within the constraints that we have written here in this document? He said, this is why we need the Article 5. The Article 5 means that the enumerated powers that are not specifically to the federal government, as it says in Amendments 9 and 10 of the Bill of Rights, they go to the people. They go to the states. But having served up there in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, I will tell you that the last thing that many representatives and senators up there on that Capitol Hill think about is each and every one of you. If we don't get this federal government to understand that the power in the United States of America, in this republic, under the understanding of a system called federalism, is with the states and with the people, then we will lose this great republic. Then we will have said to all of those generations that have borne the cost of wars, that have made the ultimate sacrifice, that have done, as Abraham Lincoln said, gave the last full measure of devotion to this great nation, their sacrifices would have been in vain. This is why I'm here. This is why you're here. Because the power in this country is not in Washington, D.C. It's actually not even right here in this state capitol. The power is in each and every one of you. And here's the opportunity for you to choose who you shall empower to govern you, not rule over you. When I look at the fiscal situation here in the United States of America, it's very simple. 49 out of 50 states in the United States of America must balance their budgets. That's why these representatives and these senators are here in this state, and that's what their number one focus is to make sure they're balancing that budget. But if you go a few hundred miles north and east of here, there's a federal government that does not have to balance their budget. There's a federal government that does not want to balance their budget. There's a federal government that continues to push more unfunded mandates and liabilities down on the state, which affects each and every one of you in your walk in life. Because they have to balance this budget. They have to meet the financial needs of this state. You have to exercise your power. You have to make sure that you say to all of those men and women that have stood on freedom's ramparts that our Constitution is still relevant, that our Constitution is still important, that our Constitution is still the rule of law in the United States of America. And those people that don't want to adhere to the Constitution, those people that don't want to do, what is right, then they need to be called out. Because there are too many young men and young women that are still to the day taking that oath to support and defend the Constitution of the greatest nation that the world has ever known. And we need to back them and show them that we appreciate their service and sacrifice. Historically, a lot of people, as Mark said, they want to talk about, well, this is something where we're going to undermine the Constitution. This is not a constitutional convention. This is not what they did after the Articles of Confederation. This is an opportunity for you, we the people, through your state legislatures, to exert your voice, to exert your power, so that we can get the balance right in the United States of America. Because the balance is supposed to be with our states. Too many people make the mistake of saying the United States of America. It's not correct. It's these United States of America. Because that's what the founders wanted to have. The power in our states, because that's where the people are. Your challenge is to go in and, as Mark said, with humility in your heart and a cordial voice, inspire these elected officials to do what's right. Inspire them to stand up for the Constitution. Inspire them to make sure that we pass on a better America to the subsequent generations, which is what this country has always been about. In 240, almost 3 years, we have passed on something greater. And let me close by saying this. Before there was an America, in June of 1775, there was an army. Before there was an America, in October of 1775, there was a Navy. Before there was an America, in November of 1775, there was a United States Marine Corps. Now, the Army let the Air Force go off and, play their own game, and we used to call them the Army Air Corps, but God bless them anyhow. But the point is this. America is not just some geographic piece of land. It's an ideal. It's something that we knew had to be defended before we put it on paper. That is what you are called to do. Defend. May God bless the great state of Mississippi. May God bless you all. And may God bless these United States of America. Thank you.
Talk to the vets that are out there. When you came into the military, and sometimes when you went to another grade, were promoted, you basically rose your hand and said, I swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help me God. Well, our Constitution has gone through a lot in the past 100 years. The individual rights of states and the individuals in states are being overwhelmed by a federal government that has overreached its authority. This is the time when your country needs you. We still need you.
Seeing how things are going in the federal government, I see this country getting very scary very quick. And before I was in the military, and I wanted to find a peaceful solution to our problems. And this seemed like the only one that could answer all the questions. I would like for the federal government to let states be states and let the federal government be the federal government. Stop meddling so much as far as to small businesses or business practices, especially with the economy that we're having today. I also would love to see a balanced budget act. I think it's very unfair that almost every state has a balanced budget act, but for some reason our federal government doesn't. I can say this much because I am a volunteer. I say this every single time. I say that the pay sucks, but it's really good for the soul. It makes me smile every single time that I get a new petition. And seeing people that, thought that there was no hope to actually take care of to put the federal government back in its box, they see that there is. I mean, our country was built by patriots, that did give everything they could. And you have to understand that these were people that were just farmers. They were just everyday average workers. They weren't politicians. And to see that, it takes the average person to actually sit there and run a country or correct a government if necessary is a very important thing.
You know, I'm retired military, and military people, you've heard it before, but it's true. We take an oath to defend the Constitution with our lives if needed. And, that oath doesn't expire just because we hang up the uniform and go do something else. And so all my life I'd listened to conservative radio and television hosts, but never heard about what to do about all these problems our country faced until I heard about Convention of States. And there it was. Boom, hit me right there. There's something I can actually do, even in Hawaii, of all places. And so it just hit me like a bug, and I've never looked back. Well, it becomes all-encompassing, really. It started out sort of part-time for me because I have other things that I do, but it's really a full-time job, even as a volunteer. And it's just the camaraderie, the fact that I am doing something to save my country for the future.
I found personally in my own life and in my practice in helping clients that virtually every sphere of our life these days is affected by government. And I did take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, and I will continue to have that commitment during part of my whole life. It did partially motivate me to join the Convention of States organization. Few years ago, I was upset with the outcome of an election, several elections, and I just decided it wasn't enough to just vote, and I needed to take a more active role in the country. I take clients when I'm out of session, when we're out of session, and when we start the session, I just don't take any more clients. And I try to wrap up the cases as much as I can before the session starts. And so that's one reason why I'm motivated to do everything possible to get this resolved in a couple months as opposed to maybe 4 or 5. What I discovered in my dealing with legislators and their staff is that they use the rules to their advantage. And so if you don't know the rules, you don't know if they're being used to your disadvantage. So it's very critical that we learn the rules as well as they do, or if not better, and use them to our advantage. And that's what I've been attempting to do as a legislative liaison. And it's a very relatively small percentage of the population that actually affects change. And so that the more of the movers and shakers in society that we contact and attract to our organization, the more we build up the grassroots, the more of an effect we're going to have. And the legislators respond to those who are active and how the depth of their interest in this issue. It isn't always the numbers, but also the depth of interest that they have. And I think that's what this organization has been successful in doing, is attracting individuals who are motivated to make a change and to invest their time and effort to make that happen.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak here this morning. I'm here to speak in support of HCR 31, the Convention of States resolution. I'm Dan Starkey. I'm a retired Master Sergeant of the U.S. Air Force, which I served proudly for 28 years. I currently live in western Greenbrier County, where I hope to stay until they find me someday drooling on my shirt collar and carry me off to the old soldiers' home. Until that time, I will carry on this fight for the future of my country. I swore an oath like yours, Mr. Chairman, when I enlisted to serve my country. Part of that oath bound me to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. It is not, as some people call it today, a quaint anachronism from a bygone era. It is the most precious statement ever made by human beings concerning the liberty of their fellow people. They all take that oath in Washington, D.C. I wonder how many of them consider their oath of office as anything more than a perfunctory checking of a box. We could speak a lot about the looting that goes on daily in Congress, but what good does that do? None. They make all the rules, sort of. Congress has effectively abdicated its lawmaking authority to the executive and judicial branches. They write very little of the legislation they pass, and they often don't even read it. Presidents enact legislation by executive fiat. The two major parties fight constantly over who will get to appoint the next Supreme Court justice to do their bidding. Bureaucracies issue mountains of regulations that Congress allows to have the effect of law. It would not surprise me to learn that each of us has already run afoul of some regulation this morning and we don't even know it. The administrative state is so powerful that it can with impunity trample on the rights of any citizens it chooses, not for any suspected crime, but simply for displaying an insufficiently subservient attitude. Americans are being held in federal custody today without trial. Some have sat in jail for a year without even being charged. But the Congress, not their problem. They're riding the federal gravy train, serving their beloved benefactors with special interest spending, and don't get between any of them and a television camera. You may not survive the encounter. The national debt, as you've heard, is now topped $30 trillion. The debt service alone will cost each and every family in this country $2,600 this year. The unfunded liability is creeping now towards 200 trillion, excuse me. And there's no plan to address it. No one in Washington seems to care. Do you? Almost finished. The states need to come together to amend the Constitution in ways that will limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, establish a balanced budget at the national level, limit the congressional power to tax, and enforce fiscal restraint on the central government. And so, I and thousands of other mountaineers ask you today to be courageous, plant your flag, make a stand for liberty, and pass this resolution. Thank you.
I am Gail McCowan, and I'm a Baltimore City resident within Senator Ferguson's District 46, a one-year volunteer with the Convention of States, and I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel of the U.S. Army. Service members who take an oath to the Constitution truly understand the meaning of service to something greater than themselves. This virtue is long lost on career politicians in Washington who exhibit little to no desire to serve their constituents. And I didn't spend 21 years serving this great country to spend the rest of my time saving it from power-hungry politicians. The federal government has become much larger than the founding fathers intended. New committees, new commissions, new policies, new agencies, new regulations, and with each new initiative comes the need for funding, while creating new solutions to old problems, when many of those problems could be solved right here at the state level. Marylanders believe this too. Our petition numbers are steadily growing within the state, and I have attended many events representing the Convention of States this past year, and Maryland citizens are talking, and they are disgusted and ready to exercise Article 5 for Maryland and for the people of Maryland who are tired of supporting federal politicians who don't support their desires and fail to represent them once they are elected. If we, the people, can't get our federally elected politicians to work on our behalf, nor hold them accountable, then the check and balance answer for the people is Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. So as a supporter and participant within the Convention of States, then the state of Maryland would then have the ability to address limitations on out-of-control federal overreach.
I was in the Marine Corps, and
I'm a Marine as well, by the way. I just finished officer candidate school this summer.
Good for you.
Thank you, sir.
Good for you.
Yep. So Semper Fi, Marine, that's
yes,
awesome.
Semper Fi. It was one of those deals where I can't really recall what political event it was that happened, but it really got me agitated, and I really started paying attention to what was going on at the federal level, and I didn't like what I was seeing. And then it just so happened that I was driving home. It was actually from Norfolk, from work. I was driving all the way home to Maryland one night. And it just so happens I was listening to the radio, and I was flipping through the stations, and I heard this guy yelling. It was Mark Levin. And he started talking about Article 5 and the Convention of States movement, so I did some research on it. And it seemed like it was really the only way that we could really rein in the federal government, because in my time, I've only seen the federal government get bigger and spend more money and just obfuscate their responsibilities. It's not a good situation to be in. It's really has a bad impact on people's liberty. And that's really what this is all about, is preserving liberty.
Go to conventionofstates.com, press the button, sign the petition. More importantly, get 10 of your friends to do the same. When you sign the petition, then that sends a letter to your state legislator. You go on the list in their district as a supporter. We deliver those lists to the state legislators. It means something.
I don't usually speak to publicly, so I'm a little nervous. I'm here, though, defending our form of government, not to change it. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I wear this particular hat because I didn't belong to the 11th Cavalry, Armored Cavalry, but they saved my butt in Vietnam during the Tet Offensive. And I understand the term enemy within the wire. And I just want to ask you, do you understand what that means when you have enemies within the wire? We had our outlying units overrun, artillery units being overrun by the enemy. And the call was enemy within the wire. That means they're not only fighting hand-to-hand combat, they're putting on American uniforms. You don't know who they are. They're inside the wire. You don't know until they stab you in the back. And I'm afraid we have that going on in Washington. We have enemies inside the wire. I'm here as a third-generation American. My grandfather taught me about his love for this country. He left Slovakia, right next to the Ukraine. He came over as a teenager, and he put an American flag in his front yard, and it never came down except at dusk, and in the morning it went back up again. He did that his whole life. He taught me those values. He passed them on to my dad. He says, you're not going to speak Slovakian in my house. You're going to speak English. You're going to learn the American way. I've left the old behind. I'm here, an American. He taught me those values. Why did I go to Vietnam? I'll tell you. It was American family values taught to me by my grandfather about this country. And the other thing was what my grandfather was taught me about socialism, what he was running away from. I heard on the news at that time in Vietnam era, you'll remember, it's the domino effect. One country falls, the next will fall. If we don't hold Vietnam, South Vietnam, then it's going to be all Southeast Asia. And then it's going to be here. Well, I say it's here. We got enemies inside the wire. But our founding fathers made a way to defend us when it got out of control. And our plea is that you guys will do your job. The domino effect has happened all across this world. It's in Washington. Look around. We have enemies inside the wire. But they have a socialist agenda, one my grandfather talked to me about. Who pays for the votes? International corporations, chambers of commerce, globalists. It's not the American people. Has it been all the polls show what the American people believe. But we have enemies inside the wire. They're our leaders, and they're leading us in the wrong direction. I ask on my grandfather's knees to vote for the Constitution of States, Convention of States. I like to call it the Amendment of States, because it's our turn to put forth an amendment, not the people in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dustin France, United States Marine Corps Corporal, medically discharged under honorable circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, the perpetuity of this great union is in jeopardy, owing to the many and sundry various usurpations impinging from the head of our government. It is not without grave consideration that we take unto discovery the medicine that is of equal and relevant force to the sickness. By our common bond, evidencing so great a cause, we are adjured to rein in the head of our republic. Tasked with so consequential and permanent a mission, many fear a runaway convention stemming from an incomplete understanding of the nature of the convention that gave us our current instrument. They erroneously state the convention overran its authority and was therefore illegal. Such inaccuracies as unbecoming this high body, let me set straight the record of the Philadelphia Convention. It was neither called by nor within the juriscope of the Confederated Congress. The Annapolis Convention, woefully underauthorized, called the Philadelphia Convention to meet the exigencies of the Union, and they recommended expanded powers. There, 9 states gave their delegates broad authority to handle the deficiencies of the Republic. 12 states in all attended, rendering 9, or a 3/4 quorum, with sufficient authorization. Our founding fathers left us a grand tradition of respect for authority. Such traditions will surely flow down to us in this convention, should we find the courage to meet the exigencies of our time. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the 90-second remarks that I had prepared, should I only have 90 seconds. As we have 3 minutes, I will expand my remarks slightly. It was the fall of 1786. James Madison and the state of Virginia, knowing that the Union was in peril, called a convention up in Annapolis. They met together, and after 3 days, they looked at the authority they had from their states. They looked at the challenges that they had to overcome, and ultimately they said, we do not have enough authority to fix the deficiencies of the Union. They said the first thing that they did in their resolution was proceed to a communication of powers. Such accusations of runaway and lack of authority simply is unbecoming Americans and unbecoming delegates and unbecoming this high body. I have here, represented as Exhibits A through Exhibits N, the Annapolis resolution that was passed by that body unanimously, and then it called the Philadelphia Convention. The other exhibits I have are all the delegation acts and letters by states authorizing their delegates to have a constitutional convention. Our great power is in limiting through our application process. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, Congress has no limiting factor on its proposed amendments. You states do.
Hi, I'm Dominique Samario, and it's an honor to be here with these 4 gentlemen to discuss a convention of states. As the daughter of a retired Marine Corps Sergeant Major, it really means a lot to discuss with these veterans why they believe in this convention of states. Growing up with my dad being in the military, he really instilled in me the values of believing in our country and believing in our country's values. So I'm very excited to discuss this convention of states with these veterans who are very supportive of it. And I'd love to learn more about the 4 of you and why you believe in having a convention of states. So thank you guys for being here and for joining us, and I'm really excited to learn more. So let's start with an old friend of mine, Ron Cuff. Tell me a little bit about your background, and particularly your background as a veteran.
Well, I'm a retired commander, Navy. I served as a flight instructor and had carrier experience out of the Philippines. Did 120 arrested landings, and fortunately I had the same number of launches, so it evened out.
I like that.
That's always a good thing. And never saw combat, but certainly valued my experience as a military person, and continue to take that forward as I continue to try to serve my country. And that's really the basis for the Convention of States. We're all volunteers. We volunteered for the military, and we're volunteering to serve to promote a Convention of States.
Perfect. And tell me, Clayton, Mr. Clayton Smith, thank you for being here as well. Tell me a little bit about your background, and then, like Ron did, kind of leading into why you're passionate about Convention of States.
Right, yeah. I joined the United States Air Force back in 1990, and between the U.S. Air Force and the National Guard, I've served over 26 years, and was in Desert Storm. And like Ron, and these gentlemen, I've served my country for so long, and I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and that's the bottom line. Is I'm so concerned about where our country is after having served that long, and what the Constitution means, and so I just felt I had to get involved in some form or fashion, and so one thing led to another, and I in the military I served in Air Force, intelligence and communications, and just a variety of things that I was able to do, and that time in service meant a lot to me. And once I saw things going the way they have been, I saw the Convention of States. I realized that elections were not enough, and I just realized that this constitutional solution was most likely the only answer that's left. And so after becoming the state director and bringing these gentlemen on as district captains, I was just, really means a lot to me to serve with other veterans to push this cause.
That's perfect. I'm excited to learn a lot more from you, that's for sure.
I'm confused by Air Force intelligence, though.
It's an oxymoron.
I'm really excited for military jab number one. All right. Yeah. Fred, Mr. Fred here, tell me about your background.
Well, I started out November 21st, 1966. At that particular time, there was a draft and there was a regular Army. I was going to get drafted because I dropped out of college, so I enlisted. RA 169-32532, that's regular Army. I thought I was going to Vietnam because all of my cohorts did. The military does everything alphabetical. I'm Yerrick. Wilson and Yerrick went the opposite direction. We went to Korea, and the rest of my group, 48 of them or 46, went to Vietnam. So my first assignment was in Korea. I've worked all different, from Signal Corps, transportation, engineer, drill sergeant, recruiter, first sergeant, and command sergeant major. And in that period of time, I have some really, they said limit it to 100 words. I don't know how to do that. So I'll just stop by saying I happened to be in Berlin when Reagan was on the West saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I had my wife and my father-in-law who served in World War II, and mother-in-law on the East. I was in uniform. The Russians watch you. We spent the whole day. We didn't realize we had the same weekend. When we came out, there was 10,000 protesters in Berlin. But our president had said, and it came to fruition, tear down this wall. I support, serve, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That's why I'm among men like these.
That's amazing. That's really incredible. Thank you for sharing your stories. And I'd love to hear Jerry Hinton.
Jerry Hinton.
Tell me your story.
Yes, I was commissioned ROTC second lieutenant out of UC Berkeley, and served 20 years. 7 of them as a aircraft commander, B-47 bomber, sat on the end of the runway for a few years, just in case the Russians decided to get more active than usual. I gave up flying for missiles, so I served in the Minuteman missile program for 7 years, and sat underground. Instead of flying, I was underground. I retired in 1975, went into civilian work. My reason for becoming active in this group is I am a historian. I know a little bit about what's gone on in the past, and I see the future not too good if we keep on the path we're going. I just see a downward spiral till it's not good. I try talking to my kids, grandkids, and I have a great-grandson now. When I try to bring up some of the problems I see that they're going to face, I didn't think I would, but maybe I'll be right there with them. Their eyes just sort of glaze over. So I think this is a chance, I think this is probably the only chance I have is trying to do something that will help them out. Regardless of what they do, this is something that we can actively do, get the Constitution amended and get the federal government under control and return sovereignty to the people and to the states where it belongs.
I think what you just finished with is a really good, succinct explanation of what a convention of states is. But to be honest, when I was discussing this show with Ron, I had never personally heard of a convention of states. And so I did a little bit of research, and maybe I'll ask Clayton, if you were to describe to somebody, because I mean, essentially anybody who's watching, you're talking to them, what would you tell them a convention of states is?
Right. Well, Article 5 of the Constitution provides two methods by which to propose amendments to our Constitution. And then regardless of what method is used, the states must ratify. 3/4 of the states have to ratify. So the first method is Congress can propose amendments from the federal level. And the second method, which is what we are now pursuing, which has never been accomplished yet in our country's history, is where the states, 2/3 of the states must apply using the same application for a convention of the states so that they can basically bypass the entire federal government, bypass Congress, and they can hold their own convention and propose amendments on behalf of the people and behalf of the states. That's what we are pursuing, to rein in the federal government. And the founders actually did that because they inserted that second option so that the states could bypass the federal government if it ever became out of control. And they predicted that from the beginning at the Constitutional Convention. That's why we're doing it now.
Right, so like you're saying, the most common way, and the way that it's always been done in the past, would be that Congress would bring up possible amendments, and then they would vote. And the states always have to vote, right?
Correct.
27 amendments we've had in the history of the country, but none of them have come from the people.
None of them had come from the states, and that's what you guys are trying to bring the states together in order to back this convention, essentially.
We need 34 states to request the convention. And what's ironic to me is that, listening to Clayton, that we were all government employees at one time.
Right.
Federal government employees, and we're asking to rein in the federal government. So we know a little bit about how the federal government operates. And so that's an interesting point to think about.
Could you talk about kind of what is the problem? Because you guys have all touched on that you're very, very passionate because you see that there are real challenges right now. And I mean, I'm assuming anybody living in the country, anyone living anywhere, we all have some, issues that we might be facing in our lives and, challenges that the government is facing. But what do you guys see? If you were to define the problem, what would
one
you?
is staring us in the face is debt. We have $19 trillion debt that we know about, hidden unfunded debt, maybe $120 trillion. Trillion is beyond my understanding, but the government right now is spending about 50% of our gross domestic product. In other words, they're spending half of what we all make. And that's not going to last much longer because we had the example of Greece, and they can't print money. We can, and that's going to come to an end also. So it's a dangerous time. Besides, we have professional politicians. We have these politicians being elected, serving for a period of time. You can't get them out because it's so difficult, incumbency, and they come out millionaires. They make it a living. And our founding fathers never intended for the government to be run by professional politicians. They were supposed to come, serve, do the duty for the country and the people, and then move on. And we don't have that anymore. I call it, we have the kingdom of, excuse me, the kingdom of Washington, D.C., and we need to, convention of states can do something about that.
There's a group called Citizens Against Government Waste that puts out a pork report every year.
Oh, goodness.
And, I'm sure the military is part of that, but as you all recall, the $400 toilet seats and the $800 hammers or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That's just a small example of what goes on and the duplication of effort within the federal government.
Right.
With regard to the military, it was interesting several years ago, some of you may remember this, we did a base realignment and closure procedure, and that was extremely successful, and it was the only way that they could close a lot of these unneeded, unused military bases. They were just, the military didn't want the bases,
wow.
but Congress would not allow them to close them without this base realignment and closure commission, which was a nonpartisan commission that studied the whole situation and recommended these bases be closed. And Congress had no choice but to vote yes or vote no on their recommendation. So that worked out really well, and I think, frankly, the whole government needs to go through a realignment and closure, because there are so many things that are duplicated. We can argue about what we want to do as a country. We can argue about the priorities of spending for the federal government, but as long as we're wasting as much through duplication and who knows what else, it won't happen. We won't be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish, and we certainly won't be able to pay down the debt.
Dominic, I was thinking when he was talking about the debt, your child's 1 year old?
He's one, yeah. So, I mean, it definitely gives me a completely different perspective on the impact that I'm having on the future for him.
$50,000 in debt he is right now at 1 year old. So we're trying to get the word out to people to get them back involved with their local assembly person, local senator, congressional people. Bring them back in to be the originals that our founding fathers thought we would. We wouldn't let our freedom go away. We would be too intelligent to have that happen. So I say to the average person, please get back involved. Research, know what's going on.
People come up to us all the time. It's become popular to say thank you for your service, right?
Right.
How many times have you heard that?
Yes,
and my most recent response is, well, I appreciate that, but do you know that you can serve just as much as we can, and just as much as we did? The average citizen needs to understand that to preserve our liberty, it's not just the people in the military in charge of that. It's every single one of us. All of us need to pay attention to what's going on, and you know, realize that this freedom, this liberty that we have isn't in our DNA, it's not in our bloodstream. We have to fight for it. All of us have to fight for it. And it's not just against all enemies foreign, it's all enemies foreign and domestic. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy. And that's all we're trying to do. We just want to have a meeting. That's all we want to do. And it's frustrating as, you know what, to me, to realize that there are individuals in these state legislatures who are blocking our request to have a meeting.
You know, earlier you had mentioned that there were these 3 areas that you were proposing, but I'd love to know more about what falls under those areas. Are those the 3 that are set in stone? Tell me a little bit more about that, because I'd love to know how people can get involved.
Right. The 3 areas that we've come up with for a possible convention allow us to propose multiple amendments. And so possible amendments that the people could see come forward could be things such as a balanced budget amendment. You could place not only spending limits on the federal government, but taxing limits as well. When it comes to the second subject, which is reining in the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, you could see certain agencies reined in. We're looking at, like the Commerce Clause, and the General Welfare Clause. Those kinds of things have been reinterpreted so much by the Supreme Court that we might want to rein in some federal agencies that have basically taken over state functions and hand those back to the states where they belong. You know, and there's really a wide range of amendments that we could have. There's one that I really like is the potential for reining in the use of executive orders by the president. And regardless of party, the office of the president putting out executive orders has really gotten out of control, and we've seen that and the effect that it can have, and it's effectively lawmaking, and it's not really, it should not be that way. Some other amendments have been discussed in many forums. Oh gosh, there's so many. An amendment that would basically prevent any international law from, trumping our Constitution as domestic law. Really, the Constitution is supposed to be the supreme law of the land, and we've allowed a lot of interpretations of our, and treaties to creep in and usurp our constitutional rights, and so things like that. What else?
It sounds like, though, if I can just make sure that I'm understanding it, if people were passionate about an area, as long as it would fall under one of the three restraints and areas that you've already put into the proposal, or what is it that you're
Application.
Application, thank you. As long as it falls within that, somebody could be very passionate about one area of that, and that's something that they could really get behind and really try to support.
Right. One big one is many people are talking about term limits for the Supreme Court.
Oh, right.
And/or federal judges. So that it allows for that. It allows for not only term limits just for Congress, but also for any federal official. So that's why it has it in there. It gives us a little more latitude to present more than just one amendment, but it does have to stay within reining in the power and jurisdiction of the federal government.
And speaking of that, when you talk about illegitimate lawmaking by the president or anybody else, I didn't know this until recently. I suspected it, but it turns out that if you investigate this, you'll find that thousands and thousands of regulations are being promulgated, that's a nice military word, by thousands and thousands of unelected bureaucrats. And these regulations have fines attached to them, and they have basically the full force of law without Congress having anything to do with them.
The average citizen, if you will, maybe feels so much is out of their control at this point that they do start to glass over, and they start to just it's so overwhelming that then you don't even try to get involved at all. And so maybe, like you're saying, we do still have, power, and also a responsibility to take our government and our freedoms very seriously. And
I think Dominique is starting to get our point.
My goal was I better really understand this by the end of today.
Can you raise your right hand?
We got more show, okay? So, but if you were to describe what is really the goal, I think Ron touched on it quite a bit just now, but Clayton, what would be the goal of the Convention of States project?
Representation is what this is all about, and it's not necessarily what is being decided, it's who is getting to make those decisions.
Right.
And what we're looking to do, our resolution specifically, what we're looking to do, our resolution that we're looking to get 34 states, is to pass a resolution that states, quote, to place fiscal restraints upon the federal government, to rein in the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and to place term limits on federal officials and members of Congress. Those three topics are what we are seeking in the Convention of States. And
so those three areas are really where you're focusing.
Yes, and it's unique because it's not just a single amendment like many of the previous attempts have been made in our country's history. We've had over 400 applications for Article 5 conventions in our country's history. and not one of them, unfortunately, has yet been able to trigger a convention. Ours is unique in the sense that it allows us, or it will allow us, to propose multiple amendments, because we now seek, we're now seeing, we're at a point in history that all three branches are out of control. And so we see the need to be able to address all three branches of the federal government. And so that's why we have a little bit broader, more than one amendment is what we're seeking. We're seeking, three different, topics.
I feel a deep responsibility for our brothers in arms, our sisters in arms who have given their lives, and that's very recent in the case of the Desert Wars and the Afghanistan wars. We have a responsibility, all of us, not just the veterans, but all of us in this country have a responsibility to get control of the federal government. And everybody's excited about this election, but does anybody really think that no matter who we elect president or Senate, Congress, is that really going to make a difference? Unfortunately, I don't think it will. I think the establishment is in place, and they're going to keep on doing what they've been doing for the last 40, 50 years.
Yeah, that leads me to a couple questions, some points that you guys brought up. But being an election year, I mean, is there any strategy behind that? Do you think it's good that it's an election year, that you guys are really trying to gather this support? Do you think that it's important to do during an election year? Tell me more about that aspect.
As a volunteer on the street, it somewhat distracts, unless you have, and all but one of the presidential candidates have spoken out when addressed about Convention of States and said yes. Some have spoken out very strongly. Currently, I could say Governor Abbott's our biggest campaign pusher, if you would, for our cause in Texas, because he is a practicing, or was a practicing attorney, and he has going to the people, and his state legislature meets twice every 2 years. So he's come out with a book and said, I'm pushing this the next year, 2017. Wow. But when I talk to people on the street, and when I make phone calls, and when people come into our website and I communicate with them, they're thinking that the election's going to save them. And I have to say to them, would you look at how we got here? It didn't just happen in this president or the last president or the last president. It's been coming since the beginning. Colonel Mason happened to be a military man. He's the one that stood up 2 days before the convention was actually ratified and said, wait a minute, we've got a provision in here for Congress to amend the Constitution, but not the people. And he got it put in. And they said, our founding fathers at that time, there's going to come a time. Well, I look around today, and as I talk to the people that I talk to, yes, vote, yes, search out the person that represents you best and has your values. But when it comes to this government, we have to rein the government back. It's a government by the people. And if you'll see state propositions, even in our state in California, we the people say, yes, we want this. Supreme Court says, nope, sorry. We're the ultimate, we're the supreme, and it was never designed to be that way.
Interesting. Yes, of course.
Back this statement up. I believe the structure of our government is broken, and the Convention of States project, we're dedicated to fixing that structure with amendments.
Yeah, he's exactly right. It's a structural problem. That is really the fundamental point here. Is it's a fundamental structural problem in government, and even like you're talking about the elections that are going on right now, and former Senator Tom Coburn is now an active campaigner for the Convention of States. He spent years in the United States Senate, and he came out and said, "There's nothing you can do.
Wow.
There is nothing that can be done to change the system now from within. It cannot be done," and that's why he is also convinced of this. He's on board. He's been campaigning across the country with Mark Meckler and Michael Ferris.
That's scary.
I have a
Right,
metaphor.
I mean, absolutely, that's really scary.
Yeah, I have a metaphor for what you're talking about in terms of structure. The Constitution gave us a tremendous foundation and a tremendous structure to build the greatest country on earth. We all believe that. But I have a background in real estate, And here in Santa Barbara, we've got all sorts of beautiful Victorian homes with wonderful structures on them. But if you walk into them, some of them, a lot of them, they're not that impressive. They stink. Kind of like where we are now with the federal government.
I like this comparison.
You know, they got dry rot, they got mold, they got mildew, but the structure's still there and the beauty is still there. But they need to be remodeled.
Right.
And essentially, that's what we're calling for. All we want is to have a meeting. Maybe nothing will come of it. Maybe we won't be able to agree on anything. If we do agree on something, it'll require 38 states to ratify any amendment that we propose.
And that meaning the vote would go to whom in the states? Who would be ratifying?
Each state is a little bit different, but it
Okay.
comes back to one state, one vote. If California says, yes, we're going to do it, and we're having our first day on Tuesday before the Assembly,
Okay.
actually the Judiciary Committee, if the state of California says, yes, we want to do that, and 34 states say, yep, they're going to do it, then each state decides how they get their delegates together. We could be delegates. We're not qualified probably, but we could be. Anybody
Don't put
could be.
yourself down, you know?
So the situation goes when you go for this meeting, and that's all it is a meeting. 34 states go, one state, one vote. That's written 200 years ago. Article 5 puts that out. So there's a fear. They say, oh no, this will be a a constitutional convention to rewrite the Constitution. No, it's not. It's a meeting, much like if we share water in California.
Right.
We had an Article 5 convention of regional states that came together, all that touched the river, and said, we're going to get together and decide how we're going to share that water. That was an Article 5 convention. People don't realize that, but it was just what they knew. It's a meeting of the states. Every one of those states had one state, one vote, but I'm sure the people in Santa Barbara had a different idea about the amount of water that they wanted than did in Arizona. But it came back to the states. They all ratified it, and now we have water from the Colorado River. It works.
Right.
That's another thing that's important to point out is there is a long history of conventions prior to and shortly following the 1787 Constitutional Convention. There were approximately 32 conventions leading up to 1787 and then beyond. They were not, obviously they were not under Article 5 per se, because the Constitution was not in existence yet. But those conventions were the precedent and the basis of Article 5. The founders had experience with conventions that dealt with specific problems, be they regional issues or defense issues, economic issues, and in many cases they also dealt with ineffective governing bodies, and they would reject regional governors. These conventions were very well known. The rules and procedures they were accustomed to them. Generations of Englishmen and American used these types of conventions to deal with specific problems over time. And that's exactly why they put Article 5 in there. They were familiar with these types of conventions. They were problem-solving conventions is what they were. And so
like that, problem solving?
Exactly. And so when
That's a catchy way to explain it to someone, actually.
Yeah. And so when 2/3 of the states are required to come together, they set the agenda for the convention by passing that application language. That is the agenda, and it cannot get out of control, or as Fred put it, they cannot have a runaway convention. It's just not possible because there's too many legal and mathematical restraints on a runaway convention or a runaway amendment. Just the bar is set so high to pass any kind of amendment. And that's the one thing I want to go back to is the convention that we're proposing right now, or we're trying to get, is simply a proposing convention.
Right. It does not guarantee anything.
It does not guarantee anything. It is simply to come up with recommendations to the states. And once those recommendations are made, they're put out to the states. And then there's an even higher bar, 3/4 of the states, or 38. And what I like to emphasize in my presentations is 38 states times 2 legislative bodies, that's 76 legislative chambers have to pass each and every amendment if they want to ratify it. So that's a very high bar. So we're not talking, you know.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me that some people are afraid of that. What I'm afraid of is what's going on now. If we continue to go down the path we're going down, it's not good.
We have a runaway convention right now because effectively what we've all seen is Congress, the Office of the President, and the Supreme Court have, over time, reinterpreted the Constitution and taken advantage of, you know, unfortunately, kind of vague language. So over time, they have run away with it and they have reinterpreted it. And all we're looking to do is bring it back to its original meaning.
And maybe something you touched on, that when they wrote it into the Constitution, that was because it was, you know, rather common or an understood practice. And so do you think that because it's just been so long since, you know, the current citizens have seen or heard of something like this, they're just a little bit, you know, people fear the unknown and it seems scary. This is our government and you're trying to change things. I mean, so do you think that, what is it that they're afraid of happening?
I think
if you will?
Go ahead. Well, the history, unfortunately, the history, like many parts of our history in our schools, have been taken out. The history of Article 5 has been basically hidden for a very long time. There are what's known right now are three phases, or three paradigms of historical writings about Article 5 of the Constitution. The first phase was in the 60s and 70s, and it was only based on very small snippets of the Constitutional Convention and the Federalist Papers, and there was no mention whatsoever of any kind of convention prior to that. So it was as if our country has only had one convention in our entire nation's history, and that's simply not the fact.
Interesting.
You know, there's been 30-something conventions. And so the second phase of historical research that was done was between 1970 and basically 2000. And so that body of evidence brought out a little bit more, actually quite a bit more evidence. And the researchers did mention prior conventions, but they didn't discuss it in depth. But they were still uncomfortable with the notion because it had never been done. And so they still concluded that we're still not real sure about it. Well, the latest body of evidence that's been uncovered were the full documentation of all 30-some conventions that took place in our country's history. And they were researched in depth by a number of leading national Article 5 historical experts. And one of those who is with the Convention of States is Professor Robert G. Nadelson. And their research basically brought out all of the facts, and they concluded that, yes, an Article 5 convention this is what the founders intended this to be, a limited problem-solving convention, and that they can do this. And so this is what this is about. It was well established and well understood in our history, but that history is just now being brought back now. We're just now being re-enlightened to that, and that's what we're trying to do, is re-educate our legislators and the people on what Article 5 is, and this most powerful tool that we have to counter the federal government.
We had a mock convention last year, as I recall, in Florida, just kind of a dry run.
Yeah, and how did
it
it
went
go?
Great.
Really?
Yeah. And I think they're planning on another one, but I don't know when that is.
There's what's called the Convention of States Caucus, and there are a group of legislators from across the country who have joined the caucus, and they're preparing to hold another simulated convention this summer. It's not lined out yet, but yeah, they're planning to do just that.
Why are veterans seeming to get involved with this Convention of States? Why do you think there's that connection?
I think it's because most of us have traveled extensively throughout the country and throughout the world, and we know how other people work. We know what it's like to live in poverty and destitution, and what it's like to live under a dictatorship, and you name it, every circumstance you can imagine. That's one thing. The other thing has already been spoken of, and that's our defense of the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And once that's in your blood, you realize that there are things more important than me. You continue to feel that way, and I've seen that ever since I got off active duty. The people who lead the service clubs, the people who run for local office are very often ex-military people, because it's not all about them, it's about their community, it's about their friends, their neighbors, and their country. And that's why we're here. We're all volunteers. We don't get paid a dime to be involved with Convention of States. I don't think so. Do you guys get paid anything?
Not lately.
If you do, can you let me know how to sign up?
And with in that same vein, and going back to you and being a family member, used to be dependent, but family member.
That's right now.
My wife and daughter traveled around the world with me. We spent 9 years in Germany. And in that 9 years, a lot of things happened. But the wall was up. And for my daughter, it would be telling her or taking my family members to the wall, and we couldn't go within 3 kilometers of the fence. And then explaining to people that we weren't keeping them out. They were keeping their citizens in. So when President Reagan did what he did, tear down this wall, it was, nobody thought it was possible. But he had the support of the person. He spoke with us. He told us what we were doing. We kind of lost that conversation. We have secret things going on now that people just don't know about, and agreements being made and treaties being made that the Congress don't even know about. How come? Who's allowing that to happen? We the people are. So what we veterans say, if you've sworn your life to defend your country, by gosh, I'm still living, and I got a lot of work to do.
As young officers, when we signed on to serve active duty, now we're veterans, and I think that tradition of serving has just been ingrained within us.
I
I agree with that. I can see that.
Yeah, it's just an awareness.
Yeah.
A much greater awareness,
Yeah.
like Ron was saying. It's just an awareness of what's going on around us, what our country is like compared to other countries, and our citizens are not aware, and they need to be, kind of brought back and woken up, and get involved is what needs to happen, because if we don't get involved, then we're in serious trouble.
What we have is wonderful, but it's very fragile. It requires maintenance.
Just like the home,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And,
No,
and
it's
that's
true.
all we're asking for, is the opportunity to do some maintenance on it and make it more efficient, so that we can all get what we want without bankrupting our grandchildren.
Right. You mentioned some support on a national scale through different elected officials. Who supports this?
I'd say overall, this is really like Ron's been saying as well, it's a nonpartisan issue. It doesn't really matter what political affiliation any of us has anymore. Everything that's coming out of Washington, D.C. is affecting us as individuals, regardless of our affiliation. And you can see people of any political color getting very frustrated about what's going on in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And so we see it, we're even here in California, we've had an Article 5 resolution was actually passed in 2014. I learned of it shortly after I became the state director, and we looked it up, and a Democrat by the name of Mike Gatto in California's District 43 introduced an Article 5 resolution in 2014, I believe it was June, and they passed it in both the Assembly and the Senate in California. So we have already passed an Article 5 resolution in California.
Do you know what the resolution was?
It was regarding campaign finance reform in a nutshell.
Oh, that's good.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing, right? Yeah, as you
Yeah.
actually were touching on earlier. So
Yeah, so it had to do with a Supreme Court ruling, I believe, that they're looking to overturn. But the bottom line is they've passed an Article 5 resolution. They understand that it can be limited in nature as far as the convention goes, and it's one of those. It's just another Article 5 resolution, and so we're just looking for a different flavor of the same thing. Really, we're just seeking a broader convention that will allow us to address all 3 branches of the federal government, because now it's just completely out of control, and we're looking, we're not even talking about us.
I don't know that
anymore.
it's out of control. It's in control, but it's not in our control.
Right.
There you go.
It's
Exactly.
in control.
In somebody's control.
It's
right?
in control of the establishment on both sides of the aisle. is what it
Right.
is.
Exactly.
And they like it the way it is.
Exactly.
Right.
And what we're talking about, though, now is not ourselves. We're talking about our children and our grandchildren. We're talking about future generations of Americans. That's really what it boils down to.
That is one thing that I would love to learn more about, is actually what you just said about it's in someone's control but not ours. But so don't we need the people that are in office to support this, that might take some
Unfortunately,
control out of
we
their
do, and that's,
hands? I mean, so that's, I feel like, for the people who are kind of that career politician, that's going to be a difficult sell for them, right? I mean, why?
Well, the good news is we don't need Congress's approval to do this. The U.S. Congress's. What we do need are these resolutions passed by the individual state legislatures.
So that's where that hope
And
could come in. Okay,
For,
that's
for
good.
whatever reason, we have 6 states that have passed the resolution, but we'd have at least, 6 or 10 more if we didn't have single individuals in each state blocking.
Wow.
Through spurious political shenanigans, basically.
We do have people from all different parties involved in the Convention of States.
That's good.
You have Republicans, you have Democrats, you have Libertarians. I've been getting calls from across the state from all kinds of people that are interested in because they're concerned. They're concerned about what's going on in Washington. And what we're looking to do, though, you mentioned, how we can do this. The state legislatures have to do it on our behalf. And what we're counting on, though, is it's difficult to get legislators to, do things, but our education process of our legislatures is working. In the first year, we had only 3 states pass it, and then we took huge losses. And then the second year, we had 1 more state, Alabama, pass it. But then the margins of loss became razor thin. We had a lot of states pass it in one chamber, one of their 2 chambers. And like Ron said, it's in a lot of cases now, it's one person standing in the way now. So we're making a lot of progress behind the scenes. And what we're counting on in the big picture is that state legislatures, they are their own sovereign government in a sense. And we know that centers of power only do one thing. They crave and desire more power.
That could be a good motivation for them.
What we are doing conceptually is pitting 50 centers of power, 50 states, against the federal government and saying, look, you hold the cards here in Article 5. You can hold a convention and take back what was taken from you. And so that's what we're counting on, and that's what the states are starting to wake up to, is they're starting to realize they actually hold the power, a unilateral power in Article 5 to completely bypass them and take it back and bring it back to the state capitals. And that's what we're hoping will happen.
So you currently have 6, correct? And in what year did they start?
Fall,
this
the
process?
late 2013 is when they began.
Wow, so it's actually, heck, I work for the government, so I can say this, but in government time, that's not too shabby, actually.
Right.
That's not even 3 years. So,
Yeah.
okay. So congratulations on that. That's great.
So, and you've had, obviously 6 states have passed, and you've had at least 37 or 38 states introduce it for consideration, including California, obviously.
Wow.
And so you have far more than 40 states in total who have taken some form of action toward reaching that 34 state goal. And it's just incredible the movement that's taking place though now. So it's really gaining a lot of momentum behind the scenes, just people just don't quite see it yet. But it's
What do we
coming.
have, over 20,000 supporters in California?
Yeah, in California we have well over 25,000 supporters statewide. We have, I believe it's closer to 30,000, and I think the petition signers, those who have signed petitions, is over 25,000 now. And so you have an average of about 300, roughly 300 per assembly district in California. So there's a lot of people that are starting to get on board and realize that this is something that needs to be done.
Make it happen. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I want to tell you something. How really unfair it is to bring out a colonel that was smart and had a part in writing the Constitution of the United States of America, and I got to follow that, and I'm just a dumb Army colonel that used to jump out of airplanes. Hey, Colonel George, you still back there? Hey, Colonel. Come here, Colonel George. Because I think it'd be pretty cool to get a picture of two colonels up here on stage. All right, come on. I know your gout's getting to you, but come on. All right, here we go. All right. Let me tell you why Colonel George Mason is one of my favorite founding fathers. Because he has a quote from 17 June 1787 that says, "Nothing so greatly impels a man to regard the interests of his constituents than the certainty of returning to the general mass of the people from whence he was taken, where he shall share in their burdens." Because this man did not believe that we should have career politicians, that people up in Washington, D.C. or wherever should be there as a permanent job. He meant for them to answer a call to duty, to call to service. He wanted citizen legislators. He did not want professional politicians. And everyone take a picture of this, because everyone says that, you know, the founding fathers are a bunch of racists and whatever. I'm standing here with a founding father, and this is my buddy, my pal, Colonel George Mason. All right. You may go back to the 18th century now.
It's much more comforting there.
Yeah, it is. Y'all didn't have any critical race theory in the 18th century. Karl Marx wasn't even born yet. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with each and every one of you. And what Mark asked me to come and talk to you all about was a call to duty. And when I think about a call to duty, first and foremost, how many soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guards we have in the audience? Please stand so we can recognize you and thank you for your service. Every single one of these men and women, they answered a call to duty. When you did not know them, they understood and they knew you. They knew you as the American people. They knew that all of us, which binds us together as brothers and sisters, is not just that call to duty, not just the fact that some of us chewed the same dirt, went out and deployed, left our families. Maybe we lost some of our best friends, our comrades. But what brought us together was an oath to that document that Colonel George Mason was integral in establishing the longest running constitutional republic that the world has ever known. Because we all stood up on one day in our lives. For me, it was 31 July 1982 at the University of Tennessee Stokely Athletic Center, and we repeated those words. We said that we would support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We said that we would bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And that is what a call to duty is all about. But when I think about what is one of the greatest calls to duty that was part of the establishment of these United States of America, well, you know, those Air Force people, they're really smart. I tried to get into the Air Force and I failed their entrance test because I couldn't fly nothing. But there was another entrance test, and it was asked me a very basic question. What does a red light mean? I said, stop. What does a green light mean? I said, go. Well, son, you can be an Army paratrooper right now. Okay? So in the Army, we're not as smart as the Air Force, so we write stuff down. That's what we were taught. And so that's why I still, to this day, have my 3x5 cards. Air Force guys, it just flows out of their brain. They're just that smart. But here's a call to duty that I want to share with you that has relevance to where we are today. These are the times which try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country, his duty. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of men and women. Tyranny like hell is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. 19 December 1776, Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was asked to write a simple pamphlet to inspire people, to get them to understand this call to duty, to make sure that we could establish this incredible nation based upon individual liberty. And Thomas Paine wrote that pamphlet called The Crisis. You all are here today, and the theme of this gathering is reclaiming liberty, because in 246 short years, we have forgotten what liberty really is. We have forgotten that this country, what Colonel George Mason established for us, was based upon an understanding that the individual, their rights, their freedoms, their liberty, they are sovereign over the institution of government. And why is the individual in America sovereign over the institution of government? Because unlike any other nation in the world, your life, your liberty, your pursuit of happiness, or if you know John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, 1683, he said property. It naturally comes from our Creator God. And that's why Thomas Jefferson invoked John Locke in the Declaration of Independence when he talked about the laws of nature and nature's God, natural rights theory. You're sovereign over government. But in 246 years, we've forgotten that. In 246 years, there are people that we have elected into office, they have forgotten that. They have forgotten the quote from Colonel George Mason, that they are there to serve us. They are not there to enrich themselves. They are there based upon the consent of you all and us, and as we say down south, of the governed. And so what is your charge? What is your call to duty? Because we are in a crisis moment. And when Colonel George Mason created those words that were implanted into the Article 5, and so many people say, well, why is Colonel West that we have never used that? We have never invoked that. Because we have never been in such a crisis between understanding the relationship between government and the individual, understanding that the Constitution is a restraining document on the powers of the federal government, understanding that the individual is supreme and sovereign over the federal government. So now it is time, thanks to you all, thanks to Mark Meckler, thanks to the Convention of States, thanks to what you're doing every single day, because there's a little thing on the wall that says, break glass in case of an emergency. That is what Article 5 Convention of States says. We are at that emergency situation. In the Constitution of the United States of America, Article 1, Section 8. How many people here got your Constitution? Colonel going to call you out now. How many people got it? Okay, you got to do push-ups. Some of y'all are saying, Colonel, you can't make me do push-ups. You're right, I'm just a civilian now. But just throw me a bone, okay? But if you're saying that you're going out and you're answering a call to duty, and a call to duty that's something that's part of the Constitution, but yet you're not carrying this around with you, you're not ready to answer that call to duty. And if you think about it, the reason why we find ourselves in this crisis situation is because not enough of us are carrying this. Not enough of us are reading this. It is not that it is not being taught to our children, because civics is gone. History is gone. I mean, our kids are being told that you don't have to be a little boy, you can be a little girl, you don't have to be a little girl, you can be a little boy, you don't have to tell your parents. But if we could get back to this foundation, and it starts with each and every one of you. So my challenge, first and foremost, anytime you go out of your house, because you're on a battlefield. Now, what soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardsman in the battlefield, in the combat zone, is going to go out of their tent, go out for their, forward operating base without their weapon? Only an idiot. You don't want to be an idiot. So when you leave out of your house, you need to have your weapon, because this empowers you. And in this document, Article 1, Section 8, it lists the 17 things that are the duties, responsibilities, jurisdictions, purviews of the federal government. Show me where it says in Article 1, Section 8 that the federal government has the ability to decide who or what's essential, to shut down whatever business that they want. Benjamin Franklin said those who would surrender essential liberty for temporary security in the end will deserve neither liberty nor security. That's why we're here today, talking about reclaiming liberty, because we've completely forgot what liberty is. First and foremost, let me tell you, you want to know where liberty truly comes from? Pick up the other book that you're supposed to read and meditate upon day and night, not turn from it from the right to the left. And who was told that? It was Joshua was told that by God. He said that if you do that, you will have success and prosperity wherever you go. In 2 Corinthians 3:17, it says that the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is liberty also. So we've got to get back to that fundamental, that very basic. Because what the federal government is now saying is that, well, you know, God wasn't smart enough to get male and female right, Adam and Eve right. You have the liberty to go out there and choose whatever gender you want. God couldn't get weather right. You know, I was a congressman here in the state of Florida, just right down the road in Fort Lauderdale. And I remember someone asking me, well, Congressman West, do you believe in climate change? I said, yeah, winter, spring, summer, and fall. But see, now the thing is that God couldn't get the weather right. He can't get any of these things right. And what is the purpose of that? Because the progressive socialist left, the Marxists, are seeking to undermine the very fundamentals of this nation. Because if God can't get gender right, if God can't get the weather right, then how can he get all of this inalienable rights thing right? How can he endow you with stuff? Because he's not smart enough to figure that stuff out. But we, government with the little g, we can do it. And if you don't study and understand what government is supposed to be able to do, then the next thing you know, they're going to come in and they're going to take over every single aspect of your life. Abraham Lincoln, in April of 1864, gave us a clear delineation between what liberty and tyranny is in a speech at the Baltimore Sanitary Fair. He told us that liberty means a person, a man, being able to do what they want with themselves and the product of their labor. While the other thing was when other men decide what to do with other men and the product of other men's labor. And where do you think we are today? In 246 short years. So the whole purpose of you all being here to reclaim liberty means you've got to answer the call. You've got to step up to the plate. You all are leaders in this movement. And let me share with you what the Army taught me about leadership. It's called the 5 C's. And please, if you like, write these down. Because if you're going to be a leader on this battlefield, if you're going to answer the call of duty, if you're going to go out there and stand up and fight for the Constitution of the United States of America, you've got to be prepared and trained and ready. The first C is courage. How many of y'all remember that incredible miniseries, Band of Brothers? Now remember that miniseries, Band of Brothers? Well, you remember that unit, the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division, was training up in North Georgia, Toccoa Mountain. That was historically the ancestral lands of the Cherokee Indians. And therefore, the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment adopted a Cherokee word as their motto. That Cherokee word is Currahee. You know what Currahee stands for? What it means? Stands alone. See, courage means that sometimes you got to stand alone. Courage means that you don't want to go with the flow. As a matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson said, in matters of style, swim with the current. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. And why was it so important for the 506 Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division to adopt that name, that word, that motto, stands alone? Because in December 1944, guess where they found themselves? At a place called Bastogne, in the dead of winter, completely surrounded by the Germans. And the Germans sent them a note to the 101st Airborne Division and asked them to surrender. And General McAuliffe, the commander of the 101st Airborne Division, sent back a one-word response to the Germans, and it was nuts. When you have courage, you stand up and you look at the progressives, you look at the socialists, you look at the Marxists, you look at the communists, you look at the statists, and you tell them, you're nuts if you think you're going to take this country away from us, okay? But with courage comes the second C, and that's competence. And you can't go out there and stand up and fight. You can be the most courageous person, but if you're a dummy, hey folks, hey, all you guys have been in combat, tell me, how many people will follow a dummy into combat? You ain't. Okay? You know, we don't talk too much about General George Pickett. You know that guy that led that charge on the third day of Gettysburg and wiped out 15,000 troops? We don't talk too much about that. Now, he had the courage to stand up there and make this charge against a well-entrenched Union force, but that wasn't smart. And so if you don't do as it says in the Bible, to study, to show thyself approved, what does it say in the Bible? My people suffer for lack of? My people suffer for lack of? Man, y'all, do y'all need to do push-ups? All right, I'm going to give you one more time, okay? My people suffer for lack of? So how can you be on this battlefield if you're not carrying your Constitution? See, when people come up to me and they say, well, Colonel West, why do you support Article 5 Convention of States? I said, it's in the Constitution. Well, you know, can you explain to it? Yeah, because under the system of federalism, you know, all of the real power in the United States of America is not at the federal government level. You know, I understand the duties and responsibilities of the federal government. And then the brilliance of the founding fathers, they came back and they wrote this thing called the 10th Amendment, which says all of the powers not specifically delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the states and to the states and to the states and to the. So why is it that we are going against something that's in our rule of law, in our Constitution, that makes sure that we do not have a federal government that steps outside their boundaries and disrespects the states and the people? And it's not going to be a runaway thing. I mean, it's not something willy-nilly. It takes 2/3 of these states here to just propose an amendment to the Constitution. 3/4 enable the states to be able to amend the Constitution. That is, again, one of those checks and balances, a fail-safe measure that the Founding Fathers put in there. But you've got to be able to quickly respond to that. Because as you know, most people, their attention span is 60 to 90 seconds. If you can't nail it, knock it out of the park in 60 to 90 seconds so that they're sitting around saying, okay, all right, kind of like, you know, was it Porky Pig? That's what you have to do. You got to look at people in the eye, look at people in the face, and with your courage and with your competence to be able to articulate the fundamentals of this great nation. See, when I hear people say that, you're a threat to democracy. Oh, Joe Biden standing up there. America is not a pure democracy. America is a constitutional republic. And in America, we have a system of representative democracy. So if you're telling me that I'm a threat to democracy, what you're telling me is that I'm a threat to tyranny. And I'm happy to be a threat to tyranny. That's how you completely unnerve them and take them off their game. But it takes courage and it takes competence to be able to do that. The third C is commitment. If you're going to have a call to duty, what are you committed to? What are you committed to? You're committed to the Constitution of the United States of America. That's what you're committed to. But see, there's so often that people will stand up and say, I'm committed to something, like I'm committed to marriage. But when some rough times come along, the fourth C, they ain't convicted to stand. What did Thomas Paine talk about? He said, the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from their duties. This is where we are. There's a lot of people that say, I'm committed to this. There are a lot of people that stand up and say, I'm a conservative, but are they constitutional conservatives? There are a lot of people that stand up and say, yeah, let's go out here and fight for America. But as soon as someone calls them a name, you're a racist, you're a misogynist, you're this, you're that. You're an Uncle Tom, you're a sellout, you're a white man's porch monkey. Yeah, that was pretty inventive, white man's porch monkey. I was like, that's pretty cool. You got me on that one. But the bottom line is this. You're looking at a guy, 22-year veteran of the United States military, paratrooper, used to jump out of airplanes, 250 pounds of gear, at 800 and 1,000 feet, been in combat zones, been shot at, been almost blown up. And you really think calling me a name is going to make me stop? So why should it make you stop? If you're committed to something, then you're convicted to it. When the people get out there and start calling you names, you should step right up into that fire even more. You know, I think Isaiah 54:17 says, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. But that's the heritage of those who love the Lord. And it also says in John 16:13, there will be trials and tribulations, but be of good cheer, for I've overcome the world. It says in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5, that there will be trials and tribulations, but trials and tribulations produces perseverance. And perseverance produces the fifth C word, character. See, I want to run and move to the sound of the battle. That's what a warrior does. When a warrior hears the sound of battle, they don't run away. We don't want you all to go out there and associate with those sunshine patriots and those summer soldiers. What we want you to do is encourage them to step up with the same courage, the same competence, the same commitment, the same conviction, the same character that you have. Character means doing what is right when no one's watching. When the state director's not watching, you're going to do what's right. When the regional director's not watching, you're going to do what's right. When the national director and Mark Meckler is not around, you're still going to do what's right. Why? Because you have the courage to do what's right. You have the competence to do what's right. You have the commitment to do what's right. You have the conviction to do what's right. And therefore, you're going to have the character to do what's right. And therefore, if we, as this incredible grassroots organization, come together and light a fire in this nation, then the crisis that we face will slowly dissipate and go away. But what I want you to understand is that where we find ourselves in the United States of America, this didn't happen overnight. This is 50, 60, 70 years in the making. And so if you think that you're just going to go out there in this election cycle, it's going to all be solved. Okay, yeah, we're good. Let's go home. Let's go away. No. Because what ends up happening is we focus so much on election cycles instead of focusing on persevering all the way through until we can plant our standard on the high ground. See, there's going to be people that, as the drill sergeants used to call, stuck on stupid, okay? There are always going to be people out there to say, I like the government giving me something. I don't want to worry about it. There's always going to be people that say, you know, you can't have a gas-powered car. You can only have an electric vehicle car. But oh, by the way, don't charge your electric vehicle because you're going to crash the grid out there in the state of California. That's called stuck on stupid. Now, as a matter of fact, that's a special kind of stupid, okay? And that idiot was putting up billboards in Florida talking about move to California. What a... But the thing is that I don't want you to get discouraged and think that you got to go out there and get 100%. See, one of the failures of some combat leaders in the military is that they sit down and they got to believe they got to come up to with a plan that's 100% perfect. But what ends up happening is we used to see out at the National Training Center in Mojave Desert, as soon as they make contact with the enemy, that 100% plan falls apart. And they're not ready to improvise, adapt, and overcome. What I want you to do is understand, go out there and focus on the 60 to 65%. Because there's 60 to 65% here in the United States of America, they understand what liberty is. There's 60 to 65% here in the United States of America. They want to be able to fill up their gas tank. They want to be able to go and work. They want to be able to live their lives. They want to be able to be the ones that decide what is happening with their children and their education, not indoctrination. Never forget that it was a year ago in Virginia, where the gubernatorial candidate, Terry McAuliffe, stood on a debate stage and he told us exactly who the progressive socialists left, who they are. Well, he said parents do not have a right in deciding what their children are being taught. And what ended up happening? People came out. because education became a critical issue for them because no one wants to see their child taken away from them. And now all of a sudden we've got good, strong grassroots movement running for city council, running for school boards. But you've got to continue to press on with that. And so there's fertile ground out there. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. That are looking for you to have the answers. And the answers are in this document that I carry right here wherever I go, right next to my heart. And so what Mark has you all here to do is become those warriors, to answer that call to duty, to answer that call to service. Because when you think about what has made this nation what it is in 246 years, we've seen so many different crises, correct? America is great because ordinary people answer call of duty and step up and do extraordinary things. America is great because God does not call the equipped. He equips those that he calls. And that's your call to duty. So as I get ready to close, I want you to all come to your feet. That means get up. Put your heels together. Put your left hand down by your side. Raise your right hand. And repeat after me. I. State your full name. Do solemnly swear. To support and defend. The Constitution. Of the United States of America. Against all enemies. Foreign and domestic. To bear true faith and allegiance. To the same. That I take this obligation freely without any purpose of evasion or mental reservation. So help me God. You may be seated. You don't have to be a soldier, sailor, airman, marine, or Coast Guardsman to take that oath. And sadly, there are people in the House of Representatives, Senate, President, that they utter those words, but it's not in their heart. But I want you now, today, from this moment on, to remember that you took an oath to the Constitution. And now your call to duty is to do exactly what men and women have done for 246 years. To be willing to do as Abraham Lincoln said, to make the last full measure of devotion to that Constitution, to this great nation. Because history is not going to judge you based upon your house. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of people down in Fort Myers, Florida, and wherever, they don't have a house anymore. History is not going to judge you by what kind of car you have, what kind of boat you have. Because God can come along with a hurricane, a tornado, whatever, and all that can go away. But this moment in time, history will judge you as to whether or not you answered the call to duty. Whether or not you made the stand. Whether or not you ensured in your little space of time that the greatest nation that the world has ever known will continue on. That's your legacy. That's your testimony to your children and to your grandchildren. And you have to be courageous enough. You have to be competent enough. You have to be committed enough. You have to be convicted enough. You have to have the character to be able to say, not on my watch. That is how history will judge us. It's not easy to stand up. But when you're right and you have the moral high ground, it is easy. But it is about you being able to step outside of that box and say, as we say, the motto of the United States Army. And understand this. In 1775, June, there was an army created. In October 1775, a Navy was established. In November of 1775, a Marine Corps was established. We let those Air Force guys come like in 1948. I mean, they were the Army Air Corps, but they want their own uniform, whatever. Now we got Space Force. But the point is this. The motto of the United States Army was, "This will defend." How do you create an Army, a Navy, and a Marine Corps, but you don't have a country? You create it because there's something called liberty that is innate to each and every one of us that we all have to defend. This is your moment to defend it. And just remember that your children and grandchildren will thank you, as it said, to those who stand now, they will deserve the love of all men and women. God bless you all and thank you.
You took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, but you never renounced that oath. The veteran is probably the most influential civilian over our state legislators. As a Veterans Coalition's director, you will help recruit, welcome, and educate other U.S. military veterans in your state about the only constitutional solution that's as big as the problem. You will be proactive in raising grassroots support with veterans groups in your community. We invite you to continue your service to our great nation. Your country still needs you. Join the fight today at conventionofstates.com.